what was the best part about a home birth?
Standing up out of the tub and walking right over to my bed and like laying down with my baby. And
they weren't pulling the baby away from you.
Just being there and like relaxing. Welcome back to the Maeband podcast. I'm Holly.
And I'm Bryan.
And what do we have to talk about today, Bryan?
We are talking about something that Holly feels super passionate about. Me. Just kidding. Yeah. We're going to talk about home births.
Home births.
Home births.
All right.
Births.
Why? Why are we talking about that today?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know. I just think
because you want to do a home birth?
I do. I do. If we were going to have another kid, yes, I would. So how many have we had? We've had two. We've had two home births.
We've had two kids.
Two that I love. We've had two home births.
6 kids.
6 kids, 4 of them in the hospital, 2 at home. And I will just say, when Holly came to me with the idea of doing a home birth, that was probably the scaredest I've ever been. Because you can't talk Holly out of something. Like if you know Holly, you know if she's like, I'm going to do this, she's going to do it.
Well, you kind of did because I wanted to do it with Maylee.
Well, I didn't talk you out of it.
With our 4th child, I wanted to do it. And he was really nervous. And then when we just kind of like agreed, like, okay.
I don't think you were fully on board. I think you were still kind of like dipping your toe in the water.
I was pretty on board, but you were pretty nervous. And when I had my 4th child, I had never not had an epidural.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's do, home birth.
See, that's
have an epidural. And then you were kind of worried about it. So I was like, okay, we'll do a hospital and I won't have an epidural.
See how it goes.
And then you said, and if we ever have any more kids, you can do a home birth.
Yeah. I didn't think we were having any more after 4.
Okay. And so then when I got pregnant with the 5th, I was like, hey, you said home birth. You said like, we could do it. And
it was
like,
terrifying.
Well, I didn't think we were going to have more.
It was terrifying. Like, because you've heard the horror stories. Everybody knows of the horror stories of something going wrong with the birth of the wife has something like bleeds it to death or something, or the baby comes out.
How many horror stories do you hear in the hospital?
I know. They're all from the hospital. That's what I'm saying is like all these horror stories came from the hospital. I get it. Yes. So at first I was terrified. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to do it, but Holly was just like, okay, this is what I want to do. And I trust Holly, like with her intuition and like what she wants to do. I trust her. And so that helped. But home birthing it was scary the first time.
The first time
it was really scary, just because you don't have a team of doctors there to help if something happens. Like if the midwife, they had an assistant, right? You
have the midwife.
And the assistant. And then there's you. You're like, okay, well.
And you can get like a doula if you want. And I didn't get a doula.
So Holly, go through the process of what. So we were in the hospital. Everybody knows the hospital process, right? You have a baby, you have it on your back, super uncomfortable for the woman. It's basically meant that way for the convenience of the doctor, right? Because he doesn't want to be in an awkward position. So the woman has to get on her back and push something out of her.
And not only that, but a lot of times when you have an epidural, like you can't get out of the bed. You can't move around. Yeah. Right. So then with Maylee, when I didn't have an epidural, I was able to labor in the tub for.
It pissed me off. Because like she was ready to have the baby in the tub. And like she was feeling so much better. She was like, oh, this is so much. Yeah. The pain is like.
And then all of a sudden,
get out of the tub and get in the bed.
Bryan like could see. He's like, I think I see like
she was like
that's
crowning.
Her head. Like I can see. And so he like went and got the doctor, the nurse or midwife or whatever. And he's like, hey, I think
she
ready. Looks ready. And they're like, okay, come on, let's go get in the bed. And they put me in the bed and put my feet in stirrups and,
Whereas she probably could have just pushed it out in the tub so much easier.
Yeah, a lot easier. And I don't know why they made me get into the bed. I mean, just hospital protocols. Like they have their ways that they do things and that's what you have to do. Yep. And even though like it's way easier to do like push a baby out, like squatting or I mean, there's so many different positions that are easier to push a baby out than laying on your back. Like gravity will help a baby come out if you're like
it's just
on your hands and knees.
We're not here to say either one is right or wrong. Like I'm all for women go to the hospital and get it done that way, but I think there shouldn't be such a
a stigma.
Well,
and I don't know if they're like, I think that stigma is kind of going away.
It is.
I actually read like home births have increased like in the last couple of years, like 20 or 30%.
And they should. Like, I'm not saying, like I said, if you want to, especially if it's high risk. Yeah. If you're a high risk, by all means, go to the hospital and do that. But Holly she had zero risk. I mean, I don't want to say zero, but she had 4 pregnancies that went very smooth. Yeah, they were painful, but the birth at home was a completely different experience than the hospital. Like the hospital is just like, you have the baby, cut the umbilical cord, put the baby on your chest for like 30 seconds. Okay, now we're going to do all these tests and all this other stuff. And then the baby comes to, and then you finally get everybody out of your room for a little bit.
The baby and bathe the baby.
And then it's just like, okay, we got to check the baby every 30 seconds because, they got to make sure the baby's
coming
okay.
all night long, like every couple hours. Let's check the baby. Let's check the mom.
Yep.
You're like, I want to sleep.
Yeah. For you, what was the best part about a home birth?
The best part.
The best part.
The best part was standing up out of the tub and walking right over to my bed and like laying down with my baby. And
they weren't pulling the baby away from you.
Just being there and like relaxing and not having to make that awful drive to the hospital when you're in labor. It's like terrible driving to the hospital when you're like in labor and having all these contractions. It's awful. Like I was able to labor the whole time at home.
And it's terrible for the husband because they're like, this baby comes out on the side of the road. I don't know what to do.
Every time we like drive to the hospital and I'm in labor, Brian's just like a nervous wreck and like,
don't have the baby, don't have the baby, don't have the baby.
He's like driving like, you okay? You okay? And anytime I'd have a contraction, I'd be like, are you okay? Oh, like, and then he's like racing,
terrifying.
Like racing to the hospital, which is not a smooth drive by any means. And you're just like bumping around. Like, it's just, it's awful. But just
being able to go into your bed right away.
Just getting in the bed right away with the baby and like not having people bother you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, there was, it's just so different.
And it's a much more spiritual experience. When we had Minya, all of our kids were there in the room and they weren't
not
watching.
When she gave birth, but
like when I gave birth.
When you were going into labor.
No,
they weren't in the room when you gave birth.
With Minya?
No.
Go watch the video.
They weren't in the room.
They were in the room. How do you forget this? They were not in the room with Kaya. They were in the room with Minya, and we have a home birth video, so you guys can go watch that because it's on this channel.
Go watch
that home birth video
they went out,
with
and
Minya.
Then when she was born, they came back in.
Nope, you can watch the whole thing with all of the kids in the room. I wouldn't
want to see that as a teenage boy.
They didn't see it. They were in the back.
Yeah.
They were like in the back of the room, and they weren't like watching the baby come out. They were in the back of the room. And they were there that you could do that in the hospital. Yeah. You could have like family come and
anyway, like it was just different because like even with the umbilical cord, like the hospital, they cut it right away. And I guess I didn't know this, but I guess there are
a lot of health benefits.
A lot of health benefits with it staying as long as it possibly can attached. Right. So when the baby was born, they put the baby on Holly's chest and just let it sit there for...
And the placenta, yeah.
It was for a long time, like over an hour, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Seemed like a long time. Obviously, my memory's bad. Basically, the home birth is everything for the mom and baby, right? Where I feel like the hospital is...
Well, and for you too.
Yeah, and the dad. Because,
and the dad.
Yeah, so the experience at home is for the mom, dad, and baby. The experience at the hospital, I feel like, is more for insurance companies, doctors and nurses, and for the mom and for the baby. But it's just like they have all their protocols because they're like, hey, this has happened before, so we can't allow this anymore. And we're going to get sued if we do this. And so it's just, it's more about everybody but the mom is what I kind of felt like with the hospital. And like I said,
you can't really like individualize the care as much in the hospital.
Yeah, that too.
Where you can individualize it a lot more. And like, I think, which was super cool, like we talked about it with the midwife, with Minya, and she was like, so like, Bryan, do you want to catch the baby? And he was like, what? No, I don't want, no. And he's like, I'm not going to catch the baby. And then when he's there, it's like his primal instincts just took over and he was like right there. Yeah. And he catches the baby, like he.
Not like catch.
Yeah, but he's like the first one.
So it was like in water. So
and
I was the first one to touch
her and like pull her out.
That was cool.
And he was like, that was the coolest experience.
Yeah.
Like
I was definitely a very cool experience. So I was the first one, obviously outside of you touching her. So yeah, I was like, as she was coming out in the water, she just like floats into my hands. It was really cool. It was really both of them. So, and then you give her to mom, and you know that she's not rushed. She's still sitting in the water. Yeah. I used to think before this, I mean, everybody just says so much stuff about home births. They're like, she's going to be sitting in all this blood and placenta and all this other junk is going to be floating around. I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. And none of that happened. It was just like, I don't know. It was just a different experience than you would have thought. Like it was just crazy. Yeah. So I caught the baby, put her on mom's chest, and they just sat in the tub for a while. And then the kids all came over and saw. It was a very cool experience. I would encourage anybody who can do that to at least try it. Or is thinking about it. At least try it. Mm-hmm. Right. Obviously, unless you're a high risk and you have some issues going on. But I know that a lot of people do C-sections now. Obviously, you can't do that at home. But for me, the catching the baby was the coolest part. We didn't have doctors and nurses coming in 24/7, not letting Holly sleep. So Holly could she gets up in the bed with the baby and they just sleep. What made you decide to want to do a home birth in the first place?
Well, a lot of things. Basically, I'd done hospital births, and I feel like you just don't have like full control and say and what you want. And like you make a birth plan, but then it just seems like it all goes out the window and they decide for you everything that's going to happen. Like, and you don't feel like, I mean, if you're going to really fight, like you could sit there and like fight, you know, for certain things, but you're in labor. You're having a baby and that's exhausting. You don't have the energy to fight for what you want. So they just come and they kind of act like
you have a say, but you really don't.
And they just, I mean, you do have a say, but they just act like you don't have a say. They come and act like you don't have a say. Yeah. And but you really do.
One thing that was really frustrating to me is when our last baby, that you probably know where I'm going with this, the last baby we had in the hospital, they just came in and put an IV in her, like a newborn baby. And we're like, what is this for? They're like, oh, we're just going to give her antibiotics just in case. I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
So I was
just in case of what?
I was strep B positive, and they were like, well, we checked her and she's like fine. She's healthy. Fine. She's clear, but we're going to give her antibiotics just in case.
I'm like, damn, people.
And so she's just this tiny little newborn with this, and you could tell it bothered her. And
that bothered me.
I felt like I probably could have said no, but I didn't know. I feel
like they just did it.
Yeah, they just kind of came in and
did it. And they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, oh, antibiotics.
I could have said, and even the first, so my very first baby that I had, I was going to try not to have an epidural. Yeah. And I remember they said, just go in open-minded, right? So I went in and she just was like,
you have to have it.
Well, not you have to, but we're just going to give you one just now. Like it's a good time. Like
it's time.
I was like, well, I wasn't like, I don't know. Like they asked me, are you planning on having one? And I was like, if I need one, I will. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, we're going to go ahead and do it. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what the heck?
Because I feel like they're trying to scare you. Well, like, if we don't do it now, we can't do it then.
Well, and with Maylee even, like by the time I had Maylee, my fourth child, I was like, no, I'm not doing epidural.
Yeah. And they tried to get
to get me to get one. Like, and they're like, well, it would be better. Like we should just like, it'll help things and we should try and give you, and they were like trying to convince me to have an epidural. And I was like, no. And then finally, I think my midwife got there came in and she was just like, no, you are not. Like she was like, but she wasn't there at first. It was just the nurses. And so I didn't have anyone to say. So, I mean, a doula, I guess, is a really good thing to have if you can afford to get a doula.
I'm not even sure what a doula is.
They're there and they kind of like fight for your rights, I think. And they're like there the whole time and they help you through labor. And I don't know. I've heard great things about them, but I never paid for one. But yeah, it's just like the choice that you feel like that you don't have, that they make you think you don't have a choice and you really do, but then you're fighting for it and it's kind of a struggle. And then, and I hated being in the hospital too. Like after I had the baby, I just wanted to go home and they'd have to check all the boxes and make you wait like 3 days and like all, and I'm like, no, like we're healthy. The baby's healthy. I'm healthy. I just want to go home. Like, why do I have to be here? Yeah. I don't want to be here anymore.
Like I said, I have nothing against the nurses, but they're just doing what they're trained to, you know what I mean? That's what the hospital makes them do. And so like, hey, we need this, this, and this. And then I feel like obviously it's just
And it's a business.
They do it. It's a big business and they do it so much. Mm-hmm. They just kind of become jaded to it, or they're just like, oh, this is what's easiest for us. This is what works.
Yeah. This is,
we've done this a lot. This is,
like,
just get you in and out. We know what works best, but everybody's just so different.
It's definitely more personalized care when you have a midwife at home. And I've always had a midwife. One baby, I did not have a midwife because I had a midwife with all my babies except for one. And that one I was like, well, maybe a girl doctor. And I'm like, it should be the same as a midwife. No, she was not the same as a midwife. Like midwife is definitely more like personalized and attentive. Yeah. And she was, she was great, but it was just definitely business.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
We were waiting for her. I think she showed up like right before.
Yeah. And then left.
Yeah.
Like,
and then like right after.
As soon as I see. Yeah. No, but it's fine. Like I said, it's nothing against them. I would highly recommend if you are going to have babies and you are not high risk, I would highly, highly recommend doing it because the experience is just a totally different experience. Mm-hmm. Like it was a really cool experience. Even for the guy, if your husband, if you're a woman watching this, if your husband isn't on board, have him watch this. I swear, I'm telling you. You'll appreciate it because it's just, it's so much better. Mm-hmm. So much better.
And there's, of course, lots of books and documentaries out there that you can watch about it. But
So, but I think we were just going to talk about that today just because I don't know why it was on my mind. Not because we're going to have any more, because we're not ever. She's laughing, but she knows it's true. We're not having anymore. I'm old. I guess the real challenge comes out when our kids are married and then they got to fight mama bear because they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to go to the hospital. And Holly's going to be like, oh, yeah.
No, I would never. I wouldn't. I'm always for like people need to choose what's right for them.
I know. I'm just joking. So if you have any questions, if you've done it, if you've had a home birth, let us know if you like what you thought of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
or if
there
you're
may be
thinking
some bad experiences out there. I don't know.
Thinking about doing it too.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Yep. Thanks for watching Maeband.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.